In the philosophical corner opposite Parmenides and Zeno were Empedocles and Anaxagoras, the Pluralists. Needless to say, they didn't like these guys very much, and they couldn't be more different. They rejected the starting point of radical monism completely, saying, well, no, not one principle can explain everything. How about several things? It made sense at the time. Empedocles was a guy from Sicily. He was something of a poet, a mathematician, and a magician. His basic understanding of reality was that everything was made up of several things, not just one. He believed that everything was made up of earth, fire, air, and water. So he was kind of taking the best of all worlds from everybody that came before him. Now, while he believed all that, in that it accounted for all this material stuff, he knew that that did not apply to things of the mind and perception, because obviously you can't say that your thought process is made up of earth, fire, air, and water. He realized that we need a separate set of principles by which to understand change and motion. On the one hand, the world is full of all these weird different things, so we need a principle of unification, how these things stick together, how they react to one another. But at the same time, you got things that are constantly changing, things that fall apart, things that rot, things that congeal. You gotta find out some kind of principle of individualization. Empedocles believed that the universe was divided between two things, love, which causes unity, and strife, which causes disunity. He believed that the world was in a constant state of flux between the two, and he was a bit of a pessimist as to where it was going. He believed that things were getting worse, not better, and that things were continually declining towards the bad. We may think that it's kind of funny that he uses terms like love and strife, unless you're a poet. But if we think about it, even in terms of our modern physics, we talk about particles and atoms that attract and repel one another. Empedocles has a few other things worth mentioning about him. He had several theories, the first of which was that there was no empty space. The Pythagoreans had postulated the idea of empty space, but Empedocles didn't believe in that. His second theory was really quite profound. It was actually one of the first theories on sense perception that was even remotely accurate. He believed that, say, when I look at CD and when I look at rubber eraser, the particles that these things emit, or the particles that are inherent in these things, they actually make contact with my eyes in some way, like they splash off and they land in my eyes, and that's how I can perceive them as such, because the particles of CD and the particles of rubber eraser have contacted my eyes. And this is not so different from what we know now to be true, that light is reflected off of these things and make contact with our eyes, and that's how we can tell the shape and the color of a thing. He's also quite noteworthy for his primitive theory of evolution. He believed that all life began as discombobulated body parts that were ridiculous, strange things, like suppose that you had an ass for a face, and somehow that was not it was not exactly an evolutionary boon. So, all ass faces died out, and the people who had faces on their heads and asses, where their asses should be, were the ones to survive. Survival of the fittest. Next up we have Anaxagoras. He was involved in the political scene with Pericles, a major head of state in Athens for quite some time. And he's most noteworthy in history for one particular legend. One soothsayer came up to Pericles and said, "Hey, look I've got this one-horned goat, and if you take it with you in front of your army, the gods will bless you in battle." And Anaxagoras, he's like, "Pshaw, whatever, bitch, this is just a brain tumor that caused that one horn to grow and the other one not to grow." And he dissected the skull, and lo and behold, there was a tumor right there that was inhibiting the growth of one horn. He's like, "Science!" He also took pluralism one step further. He believed that there was a little bit of every element in every individual item. For example, if I were to eat CD and eat eraser, well, obviously it wouldn't exactly be beneficial to me, and that would be because there would be more, say, fire in these things than anything else. Obviously you don't want to eat fire. But for a better example, consider grass. Cows eat grass, but because of the way that that grass interacts with the cow, they get milk. So there was obviously milk in that grass to begin with. And when horses eat grass, well, horses are kind of muscly, right? So there was obviously muscle to begin with in that grass. And the only reason that we see it as grass is because there's more grass in that grass than anything else. even if there is milk and muscle in that grass. He also introduced one more concept called nous, or nous, N-O-U-S, I don't know, which translates to mind. It was kind of his fallback. When he couldn't explain anything mechanically or scientifically, he would say, well, it's the mind. The mind is the perfect, implacable whatever for motion and change. Like, if I can't explain it with anything else, it's obviously the mind that's causing it. Plato and Aristotle didn't like it very much. So bored. When Anaxagoras said that there was a little bit of everything in everything, he made things a bit more complicated than they were when they started out, and for that Aristotle and Plato rejected his ideas. However, his introduction of the concept of mind led many other philosophers to ask questions for centuries to come about what other things than matter was important to reality. If you're actually paying attention to these videos, you may have noticed that I'm not answering questions in the book. I think it's more fun just to do my own thing. Until next time.
I'm going slightly mad. I'm going slightly mad. It finally happened. It finally happened. Oh yes, it finally happened. I'm slightly mad.